Cut stone, heights up, give thanks to life.
Woman of creation, take it or leave it. She's blessed,
She's blessed.
strong black woman, whoa. One day we love her, come down. Black woman, strong woman. She's like the rising sun.
Makeda. During the 10th century BC, we hear of the deeds of Makeda, a near legendary African woman. This queen had the qualities of an outstanding ruler and seems to have governed over a prosperous land encompassing parts of both East Africa and Southwest Asia. In the Quran, she is known as Bilqis. In the great epic of Ethiopia called the Kibra Negast, she is called Makeda. And in the Bible, and in the popular imagination of Western world, she is known as the Queen of Sheba. These texts show an unmistakable image of a well-developed land characterized by the elevation overall posture of women. And Makeda was not an isolated phenomenon. Either their deeds or inheritance or both enabled such black women to stand out singularly and individually. Neithhotep is credited as the first queen of Kemet, co-founder of the first dynasty and the earliest queen whose name is known. You could even say that she reigns as kind of godmother of Kemet, the greatest nation of the ancient world. Neithhotep means the goddess Neith is satisfied. Neithhotep's dynastic marriage to King Narmer represents the start of the early dynastic period of Kemet and the unification of the two lands of the lower and upper Kemet. Neithhotep's name was found in several locations, particularly at ancient Neithhotep and in the general vicinity at the site of the royal tombs of el-Qab. Her titles were Foremost of Women and Consort of the Two Ladies. Both were titles given to queens during the first dynasty of Kemet. Amina Sankara, the great African woman, was a princess of Zazua, now Zaria, in what is now northern Nigeria. She was born in the year 1533. The Arabic name Amina means truthful, trustworthy, and honest. Amina Sankara was a fierce warrior. According to tradition, as a child, Amina's grandmother once taught her how to hold a dagger. As an adult, Amina refused to marry and helped Zazua become a focal point for trade and commercial activity. She also expanded its territory. The introduction of kola nuts into cultivation in the area is attributed to Amina. A statue at Amina at the National Arts Theatre of Lagos, Nigeria honors her, and numerous educational institutions bear her name. Queen Tiye was the beloved wife of King Nebari Amenhotep III, the mother of King Amenhotep IV, who is also known as Akhenaten, is one of the most significant figures in all of human history, and the grandmother of King Tut, perhaps the most famous king to emerge from the ancient world. Tiye is one of the most interesting figures in history, even in the realm of love and romance. Amenhotep III and Tiye married while quite young and shared one of the great love affairs of the ages. The colossal statue of Amenhotep III and Tiye found at the temple of Medinet Habu is Luxor, Egypt, demonstrates a degree of love and respect that probably has no equal. That Tiye was of great ability and powerful influence is proved by association with her husband and all of his ceremonial records. She was such an integral part of Africa's affairs that in more than one instance, foreign sovereigns appealed to her directly in matters of international importance. The surviving depictions of Tiye show her with distinct African features, and these depictions are numerous, found now in museums in New York City, Paris, Brussels, and Berlin. Indeed, there are probably more depictions of Queen Tiye than any African woman from ancient times. There are also many other notable figures of the anti-colonial, civil rights, and Black Power movements. Queen Mother Moore and Amy Jacques Garvey, Amy Ashwood Garvey, Ida B. Wells. Then in the civil rights movements you had Ella Baker, Fannie Lou Hamer, Gloria Richards, Coretta Scott King, Betty Shabazz. In the Black Power movement, you had leaders like Kathleen Cleaver, Assata Shakur, and Angela Davis. And we also had lesser-known Pan-African figures in Claudia Jones and Constance Cumming-John. The Universal Negro Improvement Association, the Southern Leadership Conference, the Nation of Islam, and the Black Panther Party, just to name a few, were much more successful with the help of women who prepared the meals, who completed paperwork, who kept records, and attended the various details necessary for men to operate. And we also have contemporary leading figures like the Honorable Samia Yaba Christina Nkrumah of Ghana and Edna Rowland of Brazil, and countless other women who are still out there on the battlefields fighting for the causes of African people that will probably remain unknown. African women play a role as educator, provider, and protector of our people's culture. Women need to be aware that in order to be involved in the transformation of society, they must be functional components of the African Revolution. This involves being politically aware and assuming an active part in all levels of the struggle. One of our greatest revolutionary African leaders from Burkina Faso, and Thomas Sankara, once said, "Humankind does not submit passively to the power of nature. It takes control over this power. This process is not an internal or subjective one. It takes place objectively in practice. Once women cease to be viewed as mere sexual beings, once we look beyond their biological functions and become conscious of their weight as an active social force. What's more, women's consciousness of herself is not only a product of her sexuality. It reflects her position as determined by the economic structure of society, which in turn expresses the level reached by humankind and technological development of the relations between the classes." There is a lot African leaders on the continent and leaders throughout the African world can learn from Thomas Sankara. Improving women's status was one of Sankara's explicit goals, and his government included a large number of women, an unprecedented policy priority in West Africa. His government banned female genital mutilation, forced marriages, and polygamy, while appointing females to high governmental positions and encouraging them to work outside the home and stay in school even if pregnant. Sankara also promoted contraception and encouraged husbands to go to the market and prepare meals to experience for themselves the conditions faced by women. Furthermore, Sankara was the first African leader to appoint women to major cabinet positions and to recruit them actively for the military. I encourage all men of African descent to get the book titled Women's Liberation and the African Freedom Struggle by Thomas Sankara, which entails a speech at the International Women's Day in Burkina Faso on March 8, 1987. It will challenge any preconceived notion about women and what the role of a woman in African society should be. A male-dominated, sexist, and oppressive society like the Western world has produced is completely foreign to African people. African men have to cease playing their part in the sexual, emotional, physical, and mental exploitation and oppression of our women. Thomas Sankara, Malcolm X, Amilcar Cabral, and many other greats understood the importance of this. Women should not be led to believe their body is their asset in order to make a living and be sexually exploited. Women should study and be encouraged and inspired by learning their traditional role in our African society. You should not accept being pushed out and discouraged from legitimate goals you want to reach in society. These series of films are aimed at creating the awareness to educate our people on how the role of women are key and has always been key to our struggle and overall success in our traditional African societies. As Claudia Jones said, a great Pan-Africanist, the capitalists know, far better than any progressives seem to know, that once Negro women begin to take action, the militancy of the whole Negro people, and thus of the anti-imperialist coalition, is greatly enhanced.